right, so this is Scott Siegel with Savannah Jams. We're getting ready for episode 3 of the Savannah Jams podcast. I'm here with Brian Goldman, the director, showrunner, all about Renaissance man at Victory North in Midtown Savannah. Brian, how are you?
Too kind. Thank you very much for all those wonderful accolades.
Thanks for being here, man. I appreciate your time. So we're from the same area, the Northern Virginia, D.C. area, right?
Yep, I grew up in Maryland on the other side of D.C. in a little town called Potomac, which was a great suburb to grow up in until Bravo TV's Real Housewives of Potomac ruined it for everybody. But yeah, I grew up like any normal kid, I want to say, riding my bike in the neighborhood, playing sports and pick up basketball games, and started playing music. I was about 8 years old. I got my first drum set. And soon thereafter, got into a band. I was about 10. And so that was, when I make myself old here, I'm 54 now. So when I was 10, it was 1980. So we were playing, it was a keyboard-centric band. We were playing stuff by bands like The Cars and Styx and Journey and Billy Idol and Duran Duran and Prince. We were serious about it. We rehearsed regularly. Our parents let us use the basements to practice. Thank God. And played all through high school. And after high school, most of my friends were staying on the East Coast to go to college, and I decided to move to the West Coast and go to school in California with no intention of ever working in the music industry. I just loved playing the drums, and 30 years later, I'm still here doing it.
Nice. I didn't know that you played the drums.
I do.
You still play?
No.
When's the last time you picked them up?
Seriously picked them up at least 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
I did, however, when we had a recent show, I forget who it was, but Jason Bible was there with us. It was one of the local shows we were doing. And so me and Jason and Chris Edwards, our front of house guy, who's a great musician who never ever plays in public either, were on stage kind of screwing around.
Yeah.
After sound check, before anything serious started. And Chris was like, come on, man, play the drums. And so me and Chris and Jason played for, a couple minutes. But yeah, I knew I never wanted to be a professional musician. I'm not good enough. I know that. I ripped off everything John Bonham ever did. So that makes you a pretty good drummer if you can rip off Zeppelin. But beyond that, the technical skills that some of these guys have are so far above and beyond.
So how long were you out in California?
I lived in California until 2010.
Oh, wow.
And I played in bands until I was, this is actually a good story. I played in bands until I was about 27. And we were never serious about it. We'd play local bars and originals and covers and, all through college, obviously, playing all the fraternity parties and homecomings. And one day, my first real job in this business was an assistant at the William Morris Agency. And my boss was great, but we worked a lot. And one day I came in and I was just dragging ass, and at 9:30 in the morning, he's like, "Hey, Brian, what's going on with such and such with this deposit?" And I said, "Give me a minute, I gotta have some coffee." And he's like, "All right, have your coffee and then come on in." And so, grabbed a cup of coffee, and 30 minutes later I went in, and he's like, "Everything okay?" I said, Yeah. I said, "I had a gig last night in Santa Barbara. I got home at 5 in the morning. I slept for 3 hours. I'm a little tired." And he's like, "Oh, how'd it go?" "Great." And he said, "At some point in time, you're going to have to decide, do you want to be a musician and play in a band, or do you want to be an agent?" He goes, "Because you really can't do both." He goes, "And if you want to be a musician," he goes, "we'll find somebody here to represent you." And at that point, William Morris was representing, this was the mid-90s, everybody in the grunge scene. So Pearl Jam, Nirvana, the Chili Peppers, Stone Temple Pilots, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. From, as well as many smaller bands. And I just said, well, I don't want to do this professionally. I just like playing for fun. I want to be an agent. And that was kind of the tipping point where I was like, okay, I've got to do one or the other. And said, let me focus on the business side of it. And that was 1997, maybe 98.
from there, I know you mentioned Pat McGee before.
Yeah, yeah.
And either you're friends with him or you repped him, or
I still rep Pat.
Okay.
But
so how did you get from deciding to be an agent in California back to the Northern Virginia area, DC area?
Never went back to DC actually.
Oh, okay. Right.
I've been back there I think probably 5 times since I left.
Oh wow. Okay.
My mom still lives there.
Okay.
But Pat's an interesting story because
I've been to a few of his concerts at Wolf Trap back home.
We just played there this summer.
Yeah.
I started working with him about 5 years ago, and I was a fan back when I guess it was Shine when the album came out in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I was living in California still, but I was a fan of the music because I was a big fan of a lot of those bands that were just great songwriting bands, like the Better Than Ezras and the Toad the Wet Sprocket and Gin Blossoms. Some of my favorite bands still.
I saw Toad the Wet Sprocket at Wolf Trap too.
They're still one of my favorite bands.
The Cranberries,
and they are on the short list of if I can ever get them to Victory North. That would be a dream come true.
That'd be great.
And Glenn Phillips, the lead singer, is a terrific human being, and in fact donated his time in a song when I was doing a fundraising compilation for the people in Ukraine. You know, we did a compilation CD, and he donated his time in a song, and you know, he's great. Anyway, so I was a fan of Pat, and since early 2000s, and 6 or 7 years ago, a mutual friend of ours, who's also a fan, who books talent for casinos, had trained at one of his casinos that he books in Washington, D.C., or Washington State. And he said, hey, I need an opening act. Is Howie Day available? Because I had represented Howie at the time. And I said, no, he's not. You know, he's doing something. And my friend said, what do you think about Pat McGee opening for Train? I said, I think it's great. And I said, I don't know who his agent is, but that'd be great. So my friend gets in touch with Pat directly, offers him this opening slot for Train. Pat, of course, says yes. My friend's hanging out with Pat in Washington State, learns he doesn't have an agent anymore. He calls me and he said, Pat doesn't have an agent. Like, you're a fan. Like, you should work with him. I was like, yeah, man, I'll call him. So I called Pat and I said, hey, my friend Steve, who just had you on the show with Train, said we should talk. How are you? And Pat gave me his whole story about what he's done and where he's been. And I just said, Pat, you don't have to sell me on who you are. I know who you are. I've been a fan forever. If you want to work together, you know, let's do it. And that was 5 or 6 years ago. And he's a great guy. He's a terrific human being. He's on his way right now down to Florida. He's hopping on a cruise actually with Train and Matt Nathanson and a whole bunch of other acts.
Oh wow!
Which I wish I could have gone on, but we've got shows, so I can't skip out on those.
So talk a bit about how you came down here to
Savannah.
To Victory.
Yeah. So backing up one step to connect the dots fully.
Sure.
2010, I was living in LA still. I'd been there for 22 years. I kind of had enough. And I had a job opportunity with a big management consulting firm to move anywhere, literally anywhere in the world I wanted to work for them because they have offices everywhere. And I chose to move to Chicago because that's where the firm was headquartered, and that's where the head of the media and entertainment was the partner who ran that department was based there. So I thought, if that's what I'm going to be consulting in, I should probably live in Chicago. So I moved to Chicago in 2010, and I may be off by a year or two.
And so we were talking about.
So I moved to Chicago.
Yeah.
Chicago's a great city, as long as you can deal with the weather. But as I always like to joke, you know, it's a better version of New York. Much easier to get around. You know, I didn't need a car anymore like I did in LA. You know, I took the subway or the bus or walked everywhere. Great music, great food, etc., etc. And I lived there for about 10 years. I got back into the agent. I worked for a consulting firm for a couple of years. Didn't really like the work itself because it's a little too corporate and buttoned up. And got back into the music business, you know, back as an agent again in about 2012, 2013. And when COVID hit, as I like to say, my world came to an end because live music, as an agent, like every concert got canceled. And my girlfriend, she just coincidentally had decided to take a break from working after 20 years in the financial services industry. She was just burned out, was taking a break. And we were leasing a beautiful place in high-rise downtown Chicago, and I said, when our lease expires, we've got to find someplace less expensive to live here because neither of us has an income, and it's stupid for us to pay as much as we're paying to live like this because we're just going to deplete our savings. And she said, you're right, I don't want to do it, but you're right. And so we kind of looked at a few places in Chicago. Everyone we saw, we said, this place sucks compared to where we live. We're just going to be depressed, and we're always going to think, like, God, why did we leave our old place? And somehow I convinced her, when our lease is up, rather than getting a new place, why don't we just put all our stuff in storage, get my car, which was still in California from when I left at my parents' house because I didn't need a car in Chicago, and let's go take a 6-month road trip, and we'll do it this is in the middle of COVID, if I didn't say that. And I said we'll go to places that are semi-COVID friendly, or the pandemic's not bad, and we'll live like local people for 6 months, and we'll figure out what we're doing after that. And somehow she said yes, because we love to take road trips, and so we found 6 cities we wanted to live in, and for a month each, and packed up all our stuff, flew back to LA, and got my car, and like a lot of people, we took a great cross-country road trip, visiting all the national parks, and we're outside. It was a lot of fun. And then we picked 6 cities that we were going to live in, and it was Philadelphia, Portland, Maine, Cape Cod, Savannah, New Orleans, and then the 6th city was going to be TBA.
Had you been to Savannah before, or had she?
Yes, we had come here on vacation, like all tourists. For New Year's Eve, we spent 2 days here in Savannah. We spent 2 days in Charleston. We liked Savannah better than we liked Charleston. Yeah, most people do. That live here at least. And, we did all the tourist stuff when we were here. The first time we came, like probably 2017, 2018, something like that. Went to the river, walked around, did the ghost tour, saw the historic homes. And we really loved the city. And so we lived here for a month. We had a place right behind Screamin' Mimi's on McDonough Street. Went to New Orleans for a month. Lived right on Bourbon Street. And I had always thought if I was ever going to leave Chicago, New Orleans would be the place I lived, because I really love the music that comes out of there. That's my favorite stuff in the world. I love their food. And it's a fun city to live in. But after living there for a month, I realized there's no way I can live here. It's too much. And so after a month in New Orleans, we were in a position where we joked we were homeless because we could go anywhere we wanted, but we didn't have a home to go back to. And I said, where do you want to go? And I said, do you want to go to Asheville, North Carolina? You going to Nashville? You want to go to Austin? You want to go to Santa Fe? Pick a city. We can go anywhere you want. And she said, how about Savannah? Can we go back? I said, yeah, let's go back to Savannah. I love it. So we found another little place on Wright Square in Savannah, and then we moved in there and then never left. But the Victory North part came about in January, the first time we were here for our first month. I was with a friend, Brett Bigelow, who I knew from before here. He was my only friend in Savannah, who runs the Instagram page Savannah Made Simple. Some of you may know.
I just actually was introduced to him by Chris, the owner of Zoomsies.
Oh yeah.
I don't know Chris Smith. I don't know if you know him.
Yep.
Yeah. So he kind of via text, he was like, "Hey, meet me, Brett." And, yeah.
So Brett and I were friends before Brett moved to Savannah, and he was my only friend in Savannah when I first was here for a month. And we were sitting around, having a drink on some rooftop bar and saying, "Oh my God, what a beautiful city this is." And I said, I love Savannah. The architecture is great, the food's great, the people are great, the weather's great, everything people say. I said, but you don't have a real music venue. And for somebody that's grown up in the music business and works in the music business, I can't drive to Charleston or Jacksonville every time I want to see, a mid-level show, like a House of Blues type of show. And he said, there's this place called Victory North. It opened up right before the pandemic. Yeah. He goes, it's a real venue. And I'm like, Victory North, never heard of it. I looked it up online, and it's a beautiful venue. And so I emailed the generic email address, info@victorynorth.com or whatever it was, and introduced myself and said, hi, I'm a music agent from Chicago. I'm here visiting on vacation. Would it be possible to just see the venue? I know you're closed for COVID, but could I just see the venue? And the owner wrote back. The owner's a doctor in Chicago named Mohammed El Dabani. And he wrote me back and said, what a coincidence. I'm from Chicago also. I'm not there, but my sound man, Chris Evans, can let you in and show you around. Great. So I made an arrangement. I went in, and as soon as I walked in the door, my first thought was, holy shit, this place is too beautiful to be a music venue. And, earlier in my career, when I was a tour manager for bands also, and so I've seen thousands of rooms across the country, and Victory North was at the tippy top of any club under 1,000 people. It reminded me of like a little House of Blues, which is always kind of the premier 1,000-person club in the country. They're always beautiful, but they also spend millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to make it look like that. And so I was talking to Chris Evans, the sound guy, and kind of learning what they had done. And I said, well, what what's the plan going forward? And he goes, we're still figuring it out, and it's pandemic, so we're closed, but it's a great space, and I said, well, thanks for showing me around. And so I immediately wrote Mohammed, the owner, and thanked him and said, here's what I think you should do with your space, because I know it's kind of in flux and you're not sure what you're going to do. And they had a great run of about 6 months of shows with a promoter called Zero Mile out of Atlanta. He books, that promoter in Atlanta books Terminal West and Variety Playhouse, and I think the Georgia Theater in Athens, and some other clubs regionally of that size. And so it made sense if he was booking a show in Athens, he would just bring it over to Savannah afterwards. So it made a lot of sense. And they did some great shows, several of whom we still keep bringing back today. Anyway, so after I saw the place, I wrote Mohammed an email and I said, here's what I think you should do. And my vision for it was it should become like a city winery, if people have been into that before. Tables and chairs, expensive-ish wine, so like $14, $16 glasses of wine, small plates of food, quality music acts of all genres, but geared towards the 30 to 60-year-old. Because if I was going to live in Savannah, that's the kind of venue I would want. And as an agent, those are the kind of clients I was working with, were the ones playing the city wineries, and you're a DC guy, the Birchmere, the Ram's Head. So that kind of vibe. And after I wrote all my thoughts to Mohammed, he wrote back and he said, that sounds great, let's do it. And I said, wait. I said, you don't understand. I don't actually do those things. I said, I think this is what you should do so that I can sell you my clients and so that people in Savannah have a place to hear music like that. I said, but, you've got a beautiful space, and, he's not from the music business. He's a pathologist. I said, I've been doing this all my life. I really would love to see you succeed. If you want to use me as a sounding board, call me anytime, because I know most of these acts. If I don't know the acts, I know the agent or the manager, and I can give you some, my input and advice and thoughts on the bands. And because it's really, really easy to lose all your money very quickly in this business. And I'd love to see you succeed. And that's how it started with them. And we continued talking while I was down in New Orleans. and I started to understand his vision and what he wanted to do, and why he was doing it. And he also owns the restaurant next door, which was called the Garage at Victory North.
That's going through a reboot kind of?
Sort of. There's a group in town called Eden Supper Club. And Eden used to do these pop-ups at various spots in town, and they would sell out immediately. And he brought them in on a residency, just to have them running the place. And it's been very successful. Their food's amazing. And so now they're there permanently, as far as I know. And what's great with Eden Supper Club is in the back of the restaurant, in the shared courtyard, we built out the bar and restaurant area. So now people can come in the courtyard before the show, get a drink, get something to eat, which was always one of my big things. Is like, I want people to be able to get food at our shows. And so there's a limited menu you can get from Eden Supper Club in the back, which is called the Secret Garden. But they've got, patatas bravas, they've got fried polenta, they've got, chorizo fries sometimes, they've got a smash burger, all reasonably priced and really good. And that's worked out well because people come early, they get a bite to eat. You can bring your food in the venue. Anyway, so he owns that. He owns 2 buildings across the street. One is a big yellow house, which formerly housed a coffee house called Trupial. There's a red brick building that's used to be an auto repair shop that still trying to figure out what to do with that. And then he owns a lot a couple blocks up, which will eventually be a parking lot. But he's got this vision to make like an entertainment district and like a compound in Starland. And I thought, this is a really cool idea. And I don't really want to go back to Chicago. Let me see if I can get involved with this somehow. And so after talking back and forth for a while, I said, why don't you let me help you out? And I can't work full-time, which is since changed because now it's full-time and then some. I go and I'll help you bring the shows in, and I can help you with the marketing and whatever else you need, and let's make this place someplace special. And that was like March of 2021, and it started slow. I think 21. There was maybe 35 or 40 shows.
Yeah, I remember that's when we first met.
Yeah,
21.
And then next year it was a few more, and the next year was a few more. And last year, if you include things like candlelight concerts and like Bingo Loco, which is, I still don't get it, but we're going to sell 600 tickets to it in a week. We did 80 events, and which is more than enough. And my focus is just on the music and the events like candlelight concerts. And we have another woman there named Andrea, who handles all of the weddings and special events and things like that, which is the other half of the business. So so it's been 4 years, and it's great.
So it's safe to say last year was your best year yet? Yeah.
Last year, when I was typing up an end of the year email that we sent out, and hopefully some of you read it. It was very long. I apologize for that, but I wanted to talk about everything. And between 23 and 24, 23 and 24, the attendance went up 60%.
Wow.
So a lot more people coming in, and now we just have to keep building on that.
Now, talk a little bit about the local aspect of it, because I remember when we met. I remember we ate lunch there, and I forgot where we ate lunch.
Me too. I don't remember.
But then you showed me the venue. Then you showed me like where the future parking lot's going to be.
Yep.
A little bit. We talked about kind of the vision for it, and I remember you were doing. You were trying to do like local stuff with hip hop night.
Yep.
And, local musicians Monday and stuff like that. I guess that never.
The local musician, the Monday never took off. But I got introduced to the local music scene by Eric Britt, and who's a great guy and continues to be a good friend today, and always tries to make me drink tequila when I see him. So I either love him or hate him for that. But one of the first shows I did at Victory North was a songwriter that I knew named Griffin House, who in hindsight was too small for the venue, but I didn't think about that then. And I needed an opening act. And I had seen on a Facebook page just called Savannah, the Savannah group on Facebook. Lots of talk about musicians and people playing. I didn't know Eric Britt ran it, but he's brilliant for branding it Savannah because everybody comes to it. And so I reached out to Eric and asked, I need an opening act for this show. Do you know anybody? And he said, well, hell, I'll do it. And I said, great, you got it. And that was the beginning of our friendship. And he had a great time and put on a wonderful show. And we got to talking afterwards. And he said, the Savannah music scene, it's a very close community because you got a great venue here. And, I'll introduce you to everybody. You'll meet, Matt and Stan and Eric Culberson and Big E and, all the guys and spent the last 20 years with. And man of his word, slowly, introduced me to everybody. And Eric said, we'd really love to start, do you think we could do some local stuff here? And I said, yes, but it's got to be something special because you guys play around town so often, at the bars for free. We've got to make something, it's got to be special so people will pay to see it, but also it'll give them, your fans, a chance to hear you the way you should be heard, with a real PA system on a real stage, as opposed to you sitting on a bar stool working your own sound at a bar. And with that, I think the first local show we did was the Homegrown Summer Jam. And the idea was, let's get 4 local bands playing original material, and let's have fans really hear the band the way they're supposed to sound. And from there, it went well, and it was such a great feeling, and everyone came out of there just saying, oh my God, this was so much fun, and the camaraderie of the musicians and the attendees, everyone, thank you for doing this, and I'm so glad I got to see them here. That was the launching pad for everything at that point. And we've done the Homegrown Summer Jam every summer since. We've tried to mix up the genres a little bit. We're doing it again this year. I don't know who the bands are going to be. But from there, and I'll probably miss some of the things we've done, but Georgia on My Mind started with, let's do a show with all the musicians in town just singing the song from a Georgia artist, and we'll do it as a fundraiser. Stan Ray and Andrew Sovine and Eric were behind that. Eric Culberson, who I became friends with from seeing him at McDonough's, said, I'd really like to do my Three Kings of Blues again. I did it at the Lucas last time. Can we try it at Victory North? So we've done that. We've done, Matt Eckstein had an idea for a Paul Simon tribute with Mark Chesnow. We did that. There was an REM tribute someone wanted to do. We did that. Jimmy Buffett, after he passed, someone's like, can we do a Jimmy Buffett tribute? Great, let's do that. As far as one idea I had was, I didn't think women were getting enough representation in the shows we were doing, and there's so much great female rock in this town that I called Sarah Poole. And I said, hey, let's put together a show of women that rock. And she created this show called Howls of the Sirens that we've done every year, which is just rock and roll with women-fronted bands. I know I'm missing some of the local shows, but with them,
the
Hank Williams one is coming up. The musicians come up with an idea, and they run it by me, and 90% of the time I say, yes, it sounds like a great idea. And once in a while I'll say, no, that's not good. It's not going to sell any tickets. I love the idea, but can't do it. And then from there, I leave it up to them to create the show. I don't know what the songs are going to be. I don't know who the bands are going to be, a lot of the times until the artist who put it together tells me. But they've all been very, very successful. And just the feedback from the fans and in the comments afterwards on Facebook, is just it's wonderful, and it really feels like we're doing something for the local musicians, and the community. And what I really appreciate about those shows is the owner, Mohammed. He lives in Chicago, and so he's not down here very much. He sees shows once in a while, but he came to one of the first local shows that we did, and I can't remember which one it was. And I introduced him to a lot of the people, a lot of musicians, and some of the regular concert goers, and all of them came up to him and thanked him profusely for having the venue and for allowing them to do the shows there. And the fans said, this is so great. This venue's so beautiful. And I think it was that show that really showed him how important Victory North was to the community and to the musicians that live here. And so over the years, I've seen a progression of we're going to be this, grade A, top tier music venue, that's prestigious and everybody wants to play, which is still the goal on one half, because we still want the national acts coming in, but we also want it to be the spot for Savannah. Like, it's for everybody. If there's music happening in Savannah, we want to support it if it's at all possible.
Now, having talked about a lot of the tribute shows and stuff, just to kind of wrap it up a little bit, where do you see Victory North going in the future, growing, or is it you're just going to kind of try just kind of the same thing for a little bit and then kind of move, or do you have any specific plans like for the future?
For the tribute shows, we'll keep doing them. We'll stick with some of the standbys that we've done every year, because they're so much fun. And I walk out of there going, this was such a special night. Like George on My Mind, which this year we did it for Emmaus House, and we raised $5,000 for the charity. And we also did it as a food drive and gave them 400 or 500 cans of food.
Oh, wow.
And as soon as the show was over, I said to Andrew Sovine and Stan and Eric, all right, let's put it on the calendar for 26. When do you want to do it? Like, this is so much fun. And this year, Dillette McDonald, do you know Dillette?
Yep.
Okay. Closed the show. And for those of you listening who don't know Dillette, because she's a very unassuming woman who's the sweetest person in the world, she's been in the music industry her whole life and has sung backup for people like Sting, the Talking Heads, the Rolling Stones. She's a bona fide rock star, but she's the most wonderful woman you'd ever want to see. And if you can go see her at the Gray, Dillette, there's your plug. Go see her at the Gray for a brunch. It's so much fun. So George on My Mind will always do. The Homegrown Summer Jam, I think we'll always do. If Eric Culberson wants to do his blues thing, we'll do that every year. Whether it's the Three Kings or whether it's something else. Especially with him not playing his around town as much, not being at McDonough's, I think it's even more important to keep supporting him. As long as Sarah wants to put together Howls of the Sirens, we'll do something like that, because we need to support the female musicians in town. The REM show we did, I personally had so much fun. I want to do it again next year. So there's a lot that I want to keep doing, and then people always have new ideas, but it's a balancing act, because you don't want to do too many of them, and then they're not special.
That's the one thing that I was worried about. I talked to John Brannigan a bit about that. I talked to Matt Eckstein actually on the phone the other night about that. And that's the one thing that got me worried.
Yeah.
Because I talked to Justin Breland.
Yep.
And he participated in his first one, the Georgia on My Mind one.
Right.
And he didn't know, he's still kind of new to Savannah, he didn't know that a few years back it was maybe once a year.
Yeah.
And now it's like
almost every month.
Every week almost, pretty much.
Yeah.
So that was my only worry, was that I didn't want to get it oversaturated to the point where it's not fun anymore, to the point where it doesn't mean anything to the community or to the musicians who are doing it. Matt expressed a lot of love that he puts on for the John Prine one every year, and that's like his baby. and he's kind of worried that if it doesn't mean anything to the musicians and they're not doing it for the love of it anymore, then what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, when Matt did his Paul Simon tribute with Mark, I mean, they spent a ton of time, and Mark charted everything out for all the musicians, and it sounded great. It's on YouTube. The whole show's on YouTube if you haven't seen it. I watched it from start to finish about 2 weeks ago, and I was at the show. But yeah, all of those shows are passion projects because it's a lot of time. It's music they might not ordinarily be doing. They're usually big bands, so there's money gets split 10 ways. So and Stan Ray said it best. Like, he can go up to Hilton Head and be a human jukebox and make 2 or 3 times what he makes when he does one of our local shows. But that's why he plays in Hilton Head, is so that he can come do these shows that he loves doing and is passionate about. And it's not about the money. It's about hanging out with your friends, doing something special for the community. But to your point, it's a lot of the same people coming to these shows. And I've gotten to be friends with them. What's great is we do those shows, and I know 80% of the people that walk in the door. They're all friends, and they hug me and say hi, and it makes me feel like I'm doing something good for Savannah. And so I think it could have been Eric Britt, who said, he goes, "Your job is to bring national music and great music to Savannah." I'm like, that's not too much pressure. I'm like, but happy to do it because I love the music business, and I really and truly believe that there's nothing better than live music. It's the finest art form there is. I'm biased, of course, but that's my feeling. But
well, I see a smile on your face. So I mean, knowing you, for the last few years, and hearing the story where you come from. I mean, I'm glad to see, just as your friend, that you're happy.
I love it,
and that that you're doing something that is meaningful, not just to yourself, but also to the community.
Yeah, it's important, and we'll keep when people have ideas for shows, we'll consider them.
I'm raising my hand. I brought this up with Matt. I brought this up. I want to do a funk show.
I'd love to do a funk show.
I think we've talked about this before.
with Big E, and and I mean, there's plenty of great musicians in town, and it's funny because sometimes some of the ideas stick, and like we think it's the greatest idea, and it's great, but just tickets don't sell.
Yeah.
And other times there's shows that you put on sale, you're like, maybe it'll work, and it's great. Yeah. Truthfully, I was hesitant about the REM show initially, and it was a sellout. But like you were saying, we don't want to wear out the musicians or the fans, and also the sponsors. Like John Brannigan in Coxborough is such a huge supporter of live music, and hops on board. And if the guys need a few extra dollars for rehearsal or to pay everybody to make sure it happens, like he's the first one in line to write them a check. And I don't know what the sponsorship money is, but $250, $500, whatever it is, it goes a long way. But you can't ask him to continue underwriting other people's passion projects. And so we don't want to burn them out. But other people like the Leboses have been great, helping out sponsor shows. The Rail Pub always is solid. Portman's Music hops on for some, but really it's the musicians going out there hustling, getting the sponsors so that they can pay themselves for these shows. And so if the funk show is a great idea, but if we can stick to 6 or 8 shows a year, that'd be amazing. Tribute special shows in addition to everything else. Because we also just I don't have the time to do it. Like I said earlier, the weddings and private events are the other half of the business. And as I looked at my calendar for this year, I think I've got 4 or 5 Fridays and Saturdays open the rest of the year. And I'd really love to put these local shows on the weekend to get the best possible draw. But the nights just aren't there. And so we'll keep doing it. And when people have ideas, nobody's afraid to approach me. Who had an idea the other day? I think it was Ryan from Lone Wolf, who plays in the Intercoastal Playboys, had an idea for a show. I won't disclose it because if it happens, you'll be surprised. If it doesn't happen, you don't want to be disappointed. I've been trying to talk to Trey Gurley for a while about a show idea. My idea for him, I'll share this publicly, was I'd love to see him do a night of Frank Sinatra, and do it a whole supper club thing with steaks and, a dinner and, there's a cigar guy in town. I'd love to do cigars in the back patio for people that are into that. Nobody steal my idea, please. We can do anything. And I'm just excited to be a part of Savannah. We've been here almost 4 years. I've made a ton of good friends, which is something, you can't do in big cities. I look at, when we had an event, our 5th anniversary party, and I was going through my Facebook, inviting people, I went through and there was 100+ people that I invited, and I said, Jesus, I'm really friends with this many people.
Yeah.
And I said,
it's cool.
It's cool, including yourself. And it's like, it's really nice that Savannah's the kind of town where, if you treat people well, and they'll bring you in and embrace you. We're always here to support local musicians and try to put them on shows when we can, and try to support them when we can.
Well, speaking of embracing, I appreciate your time, Brian. Thank you so
You're
much,
welcome.
man.
You're welcome.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you and see you again. And so everybody check out Victory North. Go on their websites. Check out their Facebook page.
Sign up on the mailing list. I promise we only bug you about once a week. We don't spam you, but people say, I didn't know that so-and-so was coming.
Yeah.
It's real simple. Sign up on the mailing list, and you'll know when everything's announced. One show I'm excited about, and I don't know when this is going to run, but
probably in a few days.
Oh, every once in a while you get excited about something different or new, and the comedian Fred Armisen's coming in.
Oh, nice.
And I don't even know what the show is, okay. But he's a great musician.
Yeah.
He's obviously done movies, Saturday Night Live. He's showing some film, I think. He's going to do some comedy. He's going to do some music.
Awesome.
And that's just one of those shows where when the opportunity was brought to me, I said, hell yes, of course I want to do the show. And I think I've got about 40 tickets left for that show. So if you're interested, buy your tickets. It's going to be gone soon.
All right, guys, you heard it first from Brian Goldman, director of Victory North in Midtown. Check out the Fred Armisen show coming up. And like you said, sign up for the newsletter. Check out their Facebook, Instagram, website. And until next time, keep jamming, Savannah.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Brian.